Good evening and welcome to a special briefing from the Rangers Review ahead of the massive game on Wednesday night. Sorry for being 15 minutes late, it was due to technical issues. The comments have been flying in pre-show, speculating about why we were late because we're in Amsterdam, in Eindhoven, and you can probably imagine what they were, but I'm not actually in Eindhoven, it's just Joshua who's flew out this morning. How was your trip, Josh?
Yeah, it's been good. Good to be here. You and the technical issues predominantly being your lighting as opposed to my flights, but not a pretty straightforward trip as far as these tend to go. Although I did see when I landed in Amsterdam that apparently a lot of flights were stopped out of the UK today for some sort of reason. So I don't know. I made it past, and here I am. So yeah, looking forward to the game on Wednesday. Good to be back in Eindhoven. Exactly, almost a year to the date that we were here last time, and hopefully a similar result would be a good continuation of what's been a good week so far after the win over Ross County for Rangers.
Any superstitions that you kept from the last trip? Same hotel, same
No.
pre-match meal or anything like that? No.
The last hotel I stayed in Eindhoven, if I'm thinking of the right one, was like right on the edge of the city, and I ended up having to get a lift home from someone who worked for PSV. So I'm much more central this time, which is good. But no superstitions. I think that if you look at the tie overall, and obviously we'll get into this tie, we'll get into the weekend's game. Rangers are arguably even bigger underdogs, maybe, as opposed to last time. I think PSV are certainly stronger, so it's going to take a big effort for them to get through you. And I think that you saw, however, in the first leg that there's the kind of defensive foundations there for them to do it. So press conference day tomorrow, we'll have all the coverage from that. We'll be live again tomorrow, myself and yourself, after we spoke to Michael Beale out at the Phillips Stadium. And then ahead to the big one on Wednesday before an even bigger one on Sunday. So yeah, big week ahead.
Yeah, just for everyone who's not aware, Michael Beale's press conference, 5 o'clock tomorrow, British time, Josh?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, around about 5 o'clock at night tomorrow for Michael Beale and a player will put up as well. So Josh enjoys a beer. I'm very jealous as I sit here in
Only half.
the west of Glasgow. So the press conference way tomorrow, we'll have live reaction from that. Obviously, all the coverage as usual on our YouTube channel. You can watch the full thing on our YouTube channel, and then me and Josh will be on to talk over what was said. Guys, thanks everyone for tuning in as well. Obviously, smash like on the video, it does help us if you can do that if you're enjoying the content. And I'm just reading the comments, but I don't think I can put any of them up in the video today for a change. But
fair enough.
What's the next few days look like for you in Holland, Josh?
Tomorrow is press conference day. So I think PSV's press conference, Peter Bosz will speak to the media. I think it's early afternoon UK time, about 2:00 our time. We're an hour ahead. So it'll be finishing off some work for tomorrow. We've got a piece on the website which is breaking down the game at the weekend, looking in detail at Rangers win over Ross County, and we can maybe get into, I know you were there, Euan, so we can maybe get into to discuss some of the details from that one. We'll have a piece on the website tomorrow looking in closer detail at the game on Wednesday, what Rangers need to do to get through, breaking down some of the comments Michael Beale's made about transitions, about set pieces. He keeps talking about levelling up set pieces because Rangers conceded from one in the first leg. So we'll be pretty busy, lots of social content coming your way. We'll have our travel diaries on our TikTok page as well. So hopefully lots of coverage to keep everyone happy. And then the big game on Wednesday, which is just so significant. I know that Rangers are the underdogs, and Michael Beale was obviously saying, I think it was in his press conference in midweek, that the actual financial difference between the Europa League and Champions League maybe isn't as much as credited with as at the outset, but there's no denying, even if another transfer isn't dependent on the Rangers reaching the Champions League, there's no denying that it would be such a big boost to reach it, especially ahead of the game at the weekend, which I think is the most important game of the weekend away, despite the financial implications attached to Wednesday. Loads of interest and angles on Wednesday because I remember so clearly last year just how shocked everyone at PSV was, how shocked all the press were. The Dutch press were covering the game. Rangers were not expected to make it through then, so that's an added kind of incentive for the home side who, although new manager and a bit of a new style, some new players, it's still that same core of players that were there last season. So lots of angles, lots to build up to, and I think on the back of the game on Saturday, which I know you were at, Rangers, they started the week pretty well with a relatively routine win away from home. 2 more wins would certainly make a good mood this time next week. Obviously, the transfer window ends on Friday, so lots of talking points to get us through this week.
Yeah, completely agree. And yeah, what you said there, I think Sunday's game is bigger, but you can't really look on to that yet when there's such a massive game on the horizon before then. Also, I was at the game at the weekend. I guess you've not spoken about it on the video yet, Josh, have you?
I'm not. You get the glamorous trips, don't you? You get to go to Dingwall 6:30 a.m. in the morning. So
everyone's seen this in the comments that Euan's not in Holland. Yeah, I get sent to Dingwall at 6:30 on a Saturday, and Josh gets to fly out to a couple of nights in Holland a few days before. So that's how it goes at the Rangers Review, guys. So if you feel sorry for me, please make sure to email or DM Josh and let him know. But let's talk about the game at the weekend. You wrote about it today, a fantastic long piece on the website. Just copied it into the comments there. So we'll have a read of that, please. One into video questions, of course. Watch us first. Go and read that. I'll give my opinions in the weekend earlier with Stevie on the live video. I mean, what was your overall analysis of the game?
Yeah, I mean, I think firstly at this stage in the season, especially when you look back at the Kilmarnock game, you'd take a comfortable 2-0 win away from home. Ross County, I think there's an argument that Ross County are arguably the most physical side, maybe aside from Kilmarnock in the division, because you look at their 2 strikers, you look at the way that they play, got quite interesting things that they do off the ball, and they have a goal. They're pretty aggressive, so that's not criticism at all. But especially if you look at that strike force and the challenges that they pose. I don't think it was too dissimilar to the Kilmarnock game. Obviously, Ross County come out a little bit more. I think the pitch makes a big difference. The main takeaways for me were, unlike the Kilmarnock game, Rangers scored from a set piece, which just opens these games up because it means that teams don't really have something to hold on to. And I don't think it's a coincidence that James Tavernier goes and scores, which was just another fantastic goal a few minutes after Rangers' first goal, because there's space that wouldn't probably have been there, maybe have been there had the game been tied at 0-0. So and Rangers arguably could have gone and finished it off. They didn't have fantastic chances before the break, but you think of Matondo when he should play and Sima at the end. And amongst other moments, there was the opportunity to make the scoreline slightly more comfortable. I thought the key difference was, when we kind of break this down in the piece, that I looked at that team when the team dropped. I looked at it and I thought, does that front 3 have enough pace in it to stretch the opposition? Because you looked at the team, Kilmarnock away, and Rangers. Sima obviously was in the starting 11, but Rangers weren't really able to test the Kilmarnock defence in behind. The Livingston game at home, it wasn't until pace came on that. The Rangers really started to create serious chances. But kind of what's detailed in the article is that I thought the timing of the runs that Rangers made beyond were a lot more successful. Lammers got on the ball quite a lot in the pockets in the first half, allowed Tavernier and Raskin to get beyond. And although Rangers didn't have pace kind of in the front line because Ross County were aggressive, that meant that when Rangers were playing the ball into the front line, the defenders were moving up, and then there was the time to hit the space in behind. So I thought it was a much more cohesive performance. Again, you're seeing that dynamic where Rangers are predominantly kind of playing their main football on the right-hand side, and the left-hand side is more of an outlet for Barisic crossing. I think you can see relationships starting to build on the pitch. There was a moment I think it was just before the first goal, where Cantwell, Dessers and Roof all combined with that kind of one-touch passing move that Cantwell actually tried to play back into the path of I think it was Dessers, which would have been a fantastic move had it ended in a shot, and it was just cut out at the last moment. But I thought you could see a lot of improvements, subtle improvements. It wasn't, I think Michael Beale called it a step forward. It wasn't a leap, but it was certainly a step in the right direction, and a clean sheet as well, because there was a couple of moments, especially at the start of the first half, where Ross County kind of threatened the Rangers' defence. But overall, I thought pretty comfortable. Another different type of game, but more of the template that you'd hope to see from Rangers in these domestic games away from home, as opposed to what you saw against Kilmarnock on the opening day.
Yeah, no, completely agree with you. Got to ask you this, Josh, put you on the spot. We discussed him this morning. I know that we sometimes sit in the press box and we have a joke about his performances, so you know what's coming here. Borna Barisic. What did you make of him at the weekend? And in the piece that I posted in the comments there, Joshua talks about how important the fullbacks were at the weekend and the kind of general way that Rangers have played this season with overlapping the right-hand side. It was particularly evident, I think it was Servette away, when you looked at the average passing map. I talked about the weekend as well that the fullbacks were tasked with playing width, and often if you've seen Barisic go, Tav would stay, and if Tav went, which is more often than Barisic went, and Barisic would sit in. But I thought he had a very good game the weekend. I thought defensively he was pretty good as well, and that's 4 assists this season. So he's certainly improving. Long-term option, I'd still say probably not, but he certainly deserves his place in the side at the moment.
No, I totally agree. I think with Ian's comment, and in general, I think he's been one of Rangers' better players so far this season. I thought he was very good defensively against a really difficult opponent in Bakayoko last week. He was helped a lot by Raskin, and Raskin has such an important role in this game coming up on Wednesday, as he did in the home leg, because he kind of had that dual role where at times he was stepping up to press Sangare, and then other times, every time Bakayoko got the ball, Raskin was right back to help cover him. Because he's such a dangerous player, he can go on the outside because he's so quick, but he's very left-footed. So I guess he's really, really difficult to defend. But because Raskin was getting back so quickly, it allowed Barisic a bit of a head start on the outside. But even in the moments that he was isolated, I thought Barisic did very well. And then he's continued that into the league. So, yeah, no, I think that comment's absolutely fair, because I've obviously not always been his most vocal. I've not always praised him most vocally, because at times I think that at fullback you need a player who can do different things. But the way that Rangers are playing at the moment, and again, if you look at the piece and you look at the pass network, you see it. They're predominantly doing all they're building up, and Michael Beale wants to create overloads all the time. So you're always going to see, I think, the Rangers play kind of weighted or tilted towards one side of the pitch. Maybe not always, but there's some managers who you watch their football and they'll have these symmetrical passing networks because they have a very rigid kind of structure of play. I don't think Beale's is like that in the final thirds. Obviously, at the weekend, you had Lammers dropping out that right-sided pocket, and then Roof from the left-hand side getting involved as well. And we can maybe come on to touch on him a little bit. But no, I think the comment's spot on. Barisic, 4 assists, can't argue with that. And I think defensively he's been really good. Still think long-term, as Beale spoke about in his press conference, he needs a player to push him in there. Redvan obviously needs to stay fit enough to do that. But if you're going to have a fullback who maybe isn't that involved in the build-up, isn't going to have to move inside, but you're going to isolate his crossing, then Barisic is the best option for that, undoubtedly. And I totally agree. I thought he had a very good game at the weekend.
For me, the asterisk to Barisic's good start to the season is these next 2 games. You've seen him struggle against Celtic in the past, and I thought he was excellent. Not excellent in the first leg, but I thought he was really good at limiting their threat down that side. But you've got to understand that these 2 games will be what he's judged on, and he's got to really keep these performance levels going in these 2 games. So the proof will be in the pudding, as they say. I've just posted the link to Josh's excellent article back in the chat, so do go and look at that. Just last on the weekend before we move on to the game on Wednesday. Yeah, I keep thinking it was Tuesday, but I've always said Wednesday there, but I know a couple of people have got that wrong. Not me, too professional. But Kamar Roof.
Yeah.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because he came in, he done well. He's obviously not included in the squad for this game. Michael Beale explained that last Friday in his press conference. He said at the moment he can't play 3 games in a week, and we want to keep him for the domestic games. What did you make of his performance? Did you think he's presumably is in strong contention to start against Celtic for the weekend?
I think he has to be. I mean, we spoke about Roof. Was it Hamburg in the pre-season where he came on in the second half, and it was obviously a friendly, but it was just a reminder that as a player he kind of has everything, and if he didn't have those injury issues, he wouldn't be here, I think is the blunt truth of it. I know in his press conference after and in his interviews after, he kind of referenced his own account of the injury issues that he'd been through. He obviously had that operation in April time, which I think he and the club hoped would kind of get to the root of some of the issues that he'd experienced. As a commonality with John Suter as well, who instead of being rushed back after he played in the first day against Livingston, I think when he was injured, he took extra time and up until now has played almost every minute for Rangers this season. Roof just has everything. He's such a clever footballer. He can carry the ball, but he scores goals out of absolutely nothing. And that goal, although it looks like it's just a tap in from a corner, it's so clever because he's using his body to wrestle the opponent away and put in a really good finish. And outside of that as well, he had that cross to Dessers at the back post. His final ball I thought was really good throughout. And although he's not a really pacey ball carrier who's maybe going to get you up the pitch loads in transition, I just think he's effective in every area of the game. can play with his back to goal, can combine, can drop into midfield. So I think for Rangers, the question is how many minutes can you get out of him? Because the first 2 seasons that he was here, the first season in particular, he had a couple of periods out with injury, but he was generally pretty consistently in the matchday squad, maybe available, let's say 70% of the minutes off the top of my head. That went down a little bit the season after, but he also wasn't playing a lot of the time because he wasn't favoured by the manager. So that's kind of a different story. And then got injured when he played. I think it was the Braga game and then the Old Firm game 4 days after one another, which with his injury record I don't think was a good idea. Last season was a bit of an exception where he was only available for maybe 7, 8, 9 match days, I want to say off the top of my head. So I don't think Rangers should be thinking let's start him every single game, because I don't think that's wise based on his last few years. But if you can start Ruth every second week and he can come off the bench at other points, then he can be a big asset into the squad. And I thought as well, speaking after the game, he looked really engaged, obviously speaking about the title very vocally and the need and the desire to win that. If he can be a part of things alongside Tom Lawrence, you look at the state of the squad now and the depth of it and the competition for places, and it just looks night and day compared to the situation that Michael Beale inherited. So I think when Ridvan's back training, Rangers will have everyone fit and available. Again, you contrast that to this time, or just after this time last year, when you had really limited options in numerous areas of the pitch. If Kemar Roof can play a part this season, excellent. And I think Saturday showed that even if he's just coming in for his first start of the season, he's going to be ready to make a big impact if and when he's called upon.
Yeah, I actually wrote about Roof back in June. I actually said then I thought he could be a big player this season. Just put that article up there. I'll put it in the chat in a minute. But Josh, like you said, in the first 2 seasons, he missed 13 games in his first season, 14 in his second. He made 36 appearances in both seasons. So, like you said there, they were very reliable those first 2 seasons. I was supposed to link that in the chat. So it does show the quality he could bring.
Yeah.
Danilo, I mean, a lot of people are saying, well, why is Danilo not playing? They brought him in for £6 million. Should he not be playing all these big games? Should he not be playing more often? He's not started the last 2 games. Where's you sitting at? Do you think it's a case of easing him in?
I think it's too soon to judge, because what are we at the end of August? He's been at the club a month almost exactly. So listen, if he's not played much inside 3 months, then I think you can genuinely start to ask questions. But him not starting against PSV did make sense to me, because I think you could see what Beale was trying to do. Ramalho, who's PSV's, I think he's their number 5, who's obviously the one who lost the ball last year to Malik Tillman when Rangers beat PSV in the second leg of the playoff. I don't think he looks comfortable at all defending his own goal. There was 3 or 4 occasions where Sima was bearing down on him, or Dessers was, and he lost the physical battle, or he slipped. And I think the starting lineup was made with that in mind. That's maybe an aspect of Danilo's game where he's not quite as physically dominant as Dessers or as quick as Sima. I kind of think that Matondo might start on Wednesday night, and obviously he would test the PSV defence in another way. So listen, Rangers need options in the forward areas. They're playing 2 number 9s or 2 strikers, two forward profiles in most teams, whether that be Dessers and Sima, whether it be Danilo and Dessers, whoever it may be. And they'll have to use their bench wisely as well. You saw at the weekend with, to go on a tangent, with Darwin Nunez, who only played about 15 minutes, but it was just the perfect timing for him, perfect game state, and they came on and won the game. So if Danilo hasn't played much football in 3 months, then I think you can start to question things. My guess would be he's just bedding in. The games so far have maybe suited players who've been here a little bit longer. Would like to see more of him soon, though, because he scored 2 goals already. I think the finish against Morton was a really well-worked strike. His header against Livingston at home as well. But it's good to have options, Euan, because, again, to go back to the situation that Michael Beale inherited when Roof was injured and Lawrence was injured, I remember his press conference after the Old Firm game, the 2-2 draw at New Year, and he was saying, you don't know which players I like, to the press. You don't know which players I like, because I've only got about 12, 13, 14 to pick from. Now he has a completely different situation, and I guess it's about using that well while the front 3 continues to gel, while relationships start to grow. It's about picking maybe teams that are suited specifically to certain matches, and big task to do that on Wednesday night. Do you go with pace right away? Do you go with physicality? Do you go with the movement of Danilo? Don't know, but yeah, it's good to have options.
Yeah, it certainly is, and kind of brings on nicely to the game on Wednesday. I probably won't go through what team you expect to play yet, just because that's probably one for tomorrow's live video. But what we can talk about, maybe not so much personnel, but system. Do you think that Michael Beale will be tempted to go for free at the back? I think personally that he might be, and also I'll get slated because I always rate him more highly than most people do. But John Lundstram can also play that role.
No, I think he could too.
Playing that role, he can start in midfield and drop back to build possession and stuff like that as well. Do you think Beale will be tempted to go for free at the back?
I think yes, he will be. I'm in two minds about this because if you look back to the tie last week, PSG, that would be more difficult. PSV created 1.4 expected goals, and they had a lot of dangerous moments, a lot of cutbacks into the box, but about half of that was from set pieces, and I guess that's something that we'll need to improve for this tie. But the point being, Rangers generally, I think, defended their box well. They did that again. We've broken this down. If you look on the website of the analysis from the PSV game, can't remember the title exactly, but it's on the homepage. They did that not only by having lots of defenders in the box, but the way that they defended PSV differently in the left compared to the right. As we've already spoke about on the right-hand side, PSV's right, you had Raskin helping out Barisic. On the other side, you had Cifuentes and Tavernier. They got outplayed a couple of times, notably for the first goal when PSV centre-back actually was the one doing the overlapping. But the point being, it wasn't as if in that tie, Rangers' defence was really overwhelmed. I guess the question is, how different will this game be? Rangers only have 31% of possession in the home tie, so I don't see the possession stats being too different. I don't think they'll have 20%. I'd be surprised if they have 50%. I think it'll be a similar game where they're asking PSV, can you break us down? And then we're going to try and hurt you in transition. I think that's Rangers' leveler in Europe under Beale, because you're playing against a team who can financially outmuscle you, so you've got to be better at them in certain aspects or be really sound defensively. Is there a risk that in putting an extra player in at centre half, yes, you maybe give yourself more wide coverage, but then do you take a central midfielder out, and then the way that you defended the wide area so successfully last week, you lose that. So my gut instinct maybe is that if Rangers do go to a 3 at the back, it'll be with a 2 up front, and it'll be very transitional. I wouldn't be surprised though if you see a pretty similar lineup to last week, because it did generally work well. And although PSV are now at home, again, if you look at the possession stats, if you look at where they had control of the game last week, Rangers won't have as much pressure from the home crowd to come out and get up and at them, because Ibrox was starting to get a bit restless towards halftime last week before Seamer put one in the top corner. So I'm very much in two minds. Interested to see. I don't think Michael Beale will give anything away tomorrow, but interested to see what he says on the topic. I agree with you on Lundstram. Maybe you have a situation where you play Lundstram on that right side of midfield instead, because he's a better defensive profile, but then do you lose stuff going forward with Cifuentes? I thought that the game at the weekend suited Lundstram, and it's interesting because after the Kilmarnock game, I guess the narrative is you should never play two defensive-minded midfielders in a domestic game. But you see in a game at the weekend that Lundstram can actually be really effective up against two physical strikers, in a game that suits him better because it's a bit more open. It requires him to be industrious, get up and down, make a lot of slide tackles. There was that one moment before Lammers' chance where he actually took the ball off of Jack Butland and then ran the whole length of the park before Lammers hit his shot. So on the back three, not entirely convinced either way. I just think there's probably quite a lot of value in the way that Rangers defended the game last week. And I guess the question is, yes, your box might be more secure if you put an extra centre back in there, but then do PSV have more territory? Do they get down the sides more if you don't have the same setup that you did last week?
Yeah, I'm probably leaning against a back three, just for the fact that, as we mentioned there in analysing the game last week, also because Rangers haven't really played it that often this season, certainly from the start of the game, and just get that familiarity with positioning on the pitch and where you should be in those communication channels. I think you've got to go with roughly the same formation that's been played so far. The only caveat to that is Lundstram is because he can drop in there if he's playing midfield and go in there at times, which I think is quite useful. Cifuentes, I personally, I'm not on the video tomorrow, so I can say this. I wouldn't start him against PSV. I think that just the way I'd set up slightly differently. I'd go with Jack and Lundstram. So, but yeah, I can understand why people would put him in as well, just because he's had a good start to his Rangers career. But I think last week he maybe seen the deficiencies in his game, and certainly positionally, I thought he was quite a few times, and that exposed James Tavernier. And I think PSV are dangerous in the wings, so I think you look to show that up and hit them on the break.
Yeah, Cifuentes is obviously still getting up to speed a little bit in that regard, but then he didn't play at the weekend, so was that maybe with this game in mind? I think this is also positive though, and this is something that I wrote about just heading into the game. I think PSV have a pretty clear idea of how they're going to play, and that played out in the first game because although they're missing their left-footed left back, you thought, well, they adapt their shape. They just put a right-footed left back in there, and that somewhat negated their attacking ability because when Desta did get on the outside, and he did a couple of times, his final ball, the impact of that, the quality of that was limited purely because he's a right footer, so therefore it's not an ideal situation for him. PSV don't know exactly how Rangers are going to play, and I guess that is a bit of a quality. It's something that I think in a very different conversation, but it's something that under Giovanni Van Bronckhorst Rangers benefited a lot from in Europe, and that was because they were adapting to the opposition more, and they obviously did that hugely successfully on the way to Seville and PSV last season. But they don't know the exact profile of forwards that they're going to face. And I guess their argument would be, well, they know their strongest 11, and although opposition teams know that, they have real chemistry in that, and that's a benefit. On the other side, though, maybe it does just give Rangers a little bit of a subtle edge that they can go into this game with an element of unpredictability, and their game plan can be a little bit more secretive because this is a kind of entirely new group of players, and we've not seen continuity in the team selection so far because there's been a lot of different games. So yeah, as you mentioned, we're going to get into that tomorrow in the morning briefing and the evening briefing tomorrow as well on the day of the game. And we're going to have loads and loads of build up and coverage going into the game, but there's a lot of options as to what Rangers do, and I think one of the big ones is Matondo, who we can maybe come on to speak to, because I thought although he should square that ball for Sima toward maybe 10 minutes from the end, the contrast in his last appearance at Dingwall where he came off the bench and Beale said, I think crisis of confidence was the tone or the line that he used. You compare that to now and he looks full of confidence and a completely different player, and that's another exciting little addition towards the end of the transfer window, even though he's not a new signing, because if you're Matondo, you'd be confident that with the space you're going to get, with the open spaces in this tie tomorrow, as he did in the home leg, you'd be able to make a pretty serious impact.
Yeah, I wrote about Ryan Matondo at the weekend as well, and exactly what you said. It's almost like you're reading my piece, Josh. I'm not joking.
I did read it. So.
But talking about just the sheer contrast, because it was at Dingwall, and that's where Michael Beale came out with the quote about confidence, and then he came on the weekend, the fans are singing his song. Every time he got the ball, he looked to get past the defender. I think for being a little bit critical, he should have at least had a goal and assist in that weekend. I thought his end product at times was a little bit suspect. There was the one where he went for that shot, just went by the post. I thought he should have squared it to Sima.
Yeah, definitely.
Sima definitely thought that Matondo should have squared it as well, but it was that. I don't know where this right foot shot came from. There was the one against PSV at home, which was unbelievable, and he came on the weekend and there was one again. He put so much power in it as well. He's a player full of confidence. I suppose Beale will want pacing inside on Wednesday, I believe, so it comes down between does he go with Sima or does he go with Matondo? And a lot of people don't realise this, Josh. We spoke about it last week at the game, and the gantry is Sima's ability defending set pieces is quite important, and you've seen that at the weekend. He literally prevented a goal.
It was a bit, and there's still a little bit of time to go in the game, so it set up negated a nervy finish. But no, you're spot on. I think that Matondo might not start because if you're a defender, let's imagine you're one of the two PSV centre backs, and Rangers have kept the game relatively tight for 50, 55, 60 minutes, and then you see Matondo coming off the bench. That's not fun to defend against. And maybe instead of putting him in the aspect of the game, where Rangers probably aren't going to win the game within the first 60 minutes. I think that PSV will come out and they'll be very aggressive, and Rangers will probably come under a lot of pressure. Maybe Sima starts, as you point out, for the set piece element, the fact that he scored last week, and although he's still finding his feet as a Rangers player, he does give you that transitional threat. I definitely think I want to say Dester starts, even though he's played the last two games, because he's got a good record against PSV, he knows the league well, but then so does Danilo. Danilo's literally just come from that league last season. So again, good options up there. You've also got the added element to this game of Sam Lammers playing his old club, and we've got a piece on the website which is on the homepage. It will be on the social channels tomorrow, which you might have read already, but it's I went and spoke to a few people that worked with Sam Lammers in the PSV Academy, the coach that brought him to PSV age 13, I think it was. He was very highly rated at PSV when he left PSV. If you read their press release, they didn't want to let him go. He went for, I think it was £11 million to Atalanta at the time. That's another interesting addition into this game. I thought Lammers had good moments at the weekend, a few kind of rash moments as well. Against another one that's still finding his feet. But yeah, it just adds another little chapter to this playoff game, because he's going back to a place where he left in search of finding his potential. He hasn't quite done it yet. He'll have a point to prove. He'll know that ground, that stadium, that crowd better than anyone. So you've got loads of options up front. The task is, luckily not for us, for Michael Beale to get it right, because you probably have 5 players at least, there 6 maybe, who could all feasibly start in 2-3 positions. And then the question is, I think you probably put Campbell up line. I think he probably plays it at number 10 again, purely because of the defensive work that's going to be required of the 2 outside midfielders. But those 2 striking positions, not looking forward to the predicted lineups, because I don't really have too much of an idea at present.
Yeah, that's one for tomorrow's chats. Obviously, Josh will be on with, I think,
Derek will be back, thankfully.
Derek at 9:30 tomorrow morning to talk about more into team selections and focus more on the game. The last thing we should probably touch on, just because it's obviously broke before, after our morning briefing, is Leon King and how that affects the centre-back situation at Rangers. So it looks like Leon's going to go out on loan. Obviously had the opportunity in January, it didn't happen. He looks like he's going to go on loan this month to England. And the Harry rumours just don't go away. So thoughts on Leon and the overall centre-back issue, Josh?
Yeah, obviously that was a good friend of the show, Chris Jack, reporting that a few hours ago, that Leon King might be or is allowed to go out on loan before the end of the window. I don't think it's too much of a surprise. You look at the Rangers centre-back options at the moment, and he's probably 5th in the pecking order. I think centre-back is, we know that there's still going to be transfer activity this week for Rangers. I think centre-back is undoubtedly probably top of the agenda, especially since Matondo's brief renaissance in the last couple of weeks. I know it's not been that sustained. In an ideal world, you'd probably want 2 players, another attacking option and a centre-back as well. But I think it makes sense. I think Leon King needs to play football. He's at the age where he's broken into the first team. I guess it's very difficult to bridge that gap between breaking into the first team and getting initial appearances, or being considered one of the first 3 to 4 first team options. And I think it's pretty commonsensical to suggest that he needs to go and play football like Alex Lowry has done. And Alex Lowry, I think, has had quite a lot of impressive moments so far for Hearts. So not too surprised at the move. Definitely think that Rangers need to bring in another centre-back before the close of play in the window for depth, for another option in there, even if John Souttar, again, although he's had a few shaky moments getting caught under the ball at a few goals, again, name-checked by Michael Beale the weekend, and I can't think of another player who's been name-checked as regularly as John Souttar by the manager, Rangers manager this season. So that maybe tells you just how highly he's rated inside the building. But yeah, not too many surprises about that news that Chris reported today. Yeah,
brilliant. It's a good story for Chris. I'd definitely be keeping my eye on Harry Souttar over the coming weeks. I won't go too far on that, but I think there's a lot of gesturing at play, and don't get any secret, he's a Rangers fan, and the chance to play for the cover would be quite appealing. He's not playing at Leicester City, so all roads point to a loan deal. There's obviously Ben Davies as well, who, there's no secret, if Rangers would get him off the books, they would. Whether that can happen, whether the player wants that to happen, is another situation. But we'll be back, and well, I won't be back actually. I'm having twice in one day is more enough for you to have to listen to. So I'm actually back tomorrow night with Joshua after the press conference. So until then, Josh, have a nice day and a nice evening in Eindhoven. Any plans for tonight?
Just a spot of dinner with some others, so all very civil, and then on the morning briefing tomorrow, got some work to finish off. So not as glamorous as you're making out to be, you.
Does look like you're in gold members chamber there with the wall. So have a nice meal tonight, 1 or 2 beers, and we will see you all tomorrow, guys. Thanks to everyone else to tune in on this late night briefing, but later than usual briefing. Till tomorrow, goodbye.